I didn't think asking for 30 points from this Steelers offense was some kind of crazy demand. It wasn't like I was asking them to reinvent the game or become the greatest show on turf overnight. Just a clean, solid performance where the scoreboard didn't feel like it was stuck in second gear. And they delivered. In fact, they gave us 31. That's one more than I dared hope for. The problem? That 31 wasn't nearly enough. Not when the defense was handing out yards and touchdowns like Halloween candy in an empty cul-de-sac. The final score? Bengals 33, Steelers 31. And no, not those Bengals. Not the Burrow-led, fully armed Bengals that we've come to expect battles from. This was the skeleton crew. No Joe Burrow. No dominant ground game. A patchwork offensive line. No Mike Gesicki. Yet somehow, this stripped-down version of Cincinnati managed to roll up 470 yards of total offense. 470. That's not just getting beat. That's getting exposed. Joe Flacco, a guy who was sitting at home a few weeks ago, looked like vintage Joe Montana out there, throwing for 342 yards like he was back in his prime. And Jamar Chase? He was a human cheat code. 16 catches, 161 yards. That's not a good day. That's a career highlight reel in one night. And, as always, Higgins was right there beside him, snagging 96 yards of his own like it was just another Thursday. Oh, and let's not forget Chase Brown, a guy with a 2.5-yard average walking into this game, looking like the most forgettable running back in the league. 11 carries later, he's sitting at 108 yards rushing, and I'm left wondering if the Steelers' defense even got off the bus. Look, this isn't about just losing. Teams lose. It happens. It's the NFL. But there's a difference between losing and completely unraveling, between getting beat and just not showing up. And what we watched on that field in Cincinnati wasn't a fight. It was a collapse. This wasn't just a Thursday night loss. This was a meltdown on national television, a game where the defense, the heart and identity of this team, completely disappeared. You want to talk about the offense coughing up 2 turnovers? Fine. Mike Tomlin certainly did. But let's not pretend the offense didn't do its part. 31 points should win you a football game. Most days, that's enough to walk out of the stadium with a smile. Not this time, because what we saw from the defense, that wasn't just poor execution. That was systemic failure. That was coaching. That was preparation. That was whatever version of Terrell Austin's game plan that got drawn up for this night. And it was an utter disaster. I walked into that locker room after the game looking for answers, and let me tell you, no one had them. Joey Porter Jr.? I asked him straight up if maybe this was just too much of a challenge. 2 elite receivers to cover, both Chase and Higgins on the field at the same time. Maybe that was the tipping point. And he gave me the kind of answer you expect from a young corner with confidence. Nah, we got the guys to do it. They just got to let us play. I asked what he meant, and of course, he went to the officiating. Said he wasn't a fan of the calls. And yeah, maybe some of those flags were weak. Maybe they were ticky-tack. But if we're being real here, those calls didn't give up 470 yards. Those calls didn't make Flacco look like a pro bowler again. And they sure didn't let Chase Brown average almost 10 yards a carry. That's on execution. That's on scheme. That's on accountability. I turned to Alex Highsmith, the guy who's usually the one setting the edge, blowing up the run game, anchoring that front 7 with some grit. And I asked him point blank, what was the run defense? What will it take to get that back? His answer was as bare bones as it gets. We just got to be physical. Get off blocks. That's it. That's all he had. And maybe that says more than anything else. Nobody had answers. Not Highsmith. Not Patrick Queen, who usually wears his emotions on his sleeve and isn't afraid to call out what's wrong. He didn't have much to say either. We just need to be better. That was the line. Over and over again. We need to be better. You know what? They do. But that's not an analysis. That's not insight. That's not a solution. That's a shrug. And right now, the Steelers' defense needs more than shrug. It needs a wake-up call. Now, I know what's coming. I've been around this fan base long enough to see the pattern. The pitchforks are already out for Mike Tomlin. Maybe for Terrell Austin, too. And yes, Thursday night games are weird. The short week is real. But can we stop pretending that only the Steelers had to deal with it? The Bengals had the same amount of time to prep. They had the same travel, the same crunch, the same constraints. And guess what? They showed up ready to play. They had time to design that insane Joe Flacco bootleg that left everyone in the stadium gasping. They had time to scheme Chase Brown into daylight over and over again. They had time to ask themselves, what happens if our coverage guys can't keep up with their receivers? And they had answers. They had counters. They had adjustments. Meanwhile, the Steelers stuck to the script like it was gospel. Cover 2. Cover 3. Rush 4. Sit back. Hope for the best. And when that didn't work, nothing changed. Not in the first half. Not a halftime. Nothing. It was like they were watching the house burn and just kept tossing the same cup of water on it, hoping maybe this time would do the trick. And let's be real here. This defense? It hasn't been what it's supposed to be. It showed flashes against the Browns, against the Vikings. Sure, but 2 decent games in 6? That's not a trend. That's a fluke. This isn't a dominant unit. Not right now. Not with what we saw in Cincinnati. You can blame communication. You can blame mental lapses. You can blame technique. And all of those things showed up. Missed tackles everywhere. Guys out of position. Basic stuff. Not even things you need to be coached on. Just things you've got to do. And they didn't. At some point, the people inside that building have to take a long, honest look at what they're putting out there. Because right now, it's not good enough. It's not close. And no, I'm not thinking about playoff pushes or postseason matchups or any of that noise. Not until this team, starting with that defense, gets right. The issue isn't just performance. It's identity. For years, the Steelers were known for a defense that set the tone, that punched first and asked questions later. That hasn't been this group. Not for a while. This version doesn't impose its will. It reacts. It hopes. And hope, in the NFL, is a terrible strategy. Especially when you're letting a backup quarterback, no matter how seasoned, slice you apart like he's drawing up plays in the backyard. You can see it in the way the team carries itself after a game like this. There's no fury, no fire, just quiet answers and tired cliches. We need to do better. We've got to watch the film. We got to clean it up. That's not leadership. That's deflection. That's what happens when no one wants to say the truth out loud. That maybe the scheme doesn't fit the players. That maybe the plan doesn't match the personnel. That maybe it's time for some hard choices. Because here's the thing. The defensive schemes being used right now feel like they're stuck in a different decade. Cover 2, cover 3, 4-man rush, sit back and wait. That might work against average teams, against quarterbacks who are still figuring things out. But when you're up against 2 elite receivers, when the ball's coming out fast and the offense is designed to exploit soft zones, you can't just hope your front four gets home in time. You have to adjust. You have to mix it up. You have to throw punches instead of covering up. And yet, there was no shift, no attempt to dial up pressure, no aggressive disguises, no effort to disrupt timing or get Flacco off his rhythm. It was like the Steelers' defense just decided it was going to do what it does, no matter what was actually happening on the field. And when you do that in the NFL, you get burned. Every time. What's worse is that even the fundamentals are slipping. Missed tackles, poor angles, confused coverage. These aren't exotic problems. These are basic things that every defense has to master before they can even think about competing. And right now, this defense looks like it's trying to play chess without knowing where the pieces go. And I keep going back to this. They had time. They had the same amount of time the Bengals had. They had time to study film, to build a plan, to look at Cincinnati's weaknesses. And they didn't use it. Or worse, they used it to draw up this plan, the one that got absolutely steamrolled. Which brings us back to the coaching. Look, this isn't just about Mike Tomlin. Yes, he sets the tone. Yes, he oversees everything. But it's also about Terrell Austin and the people beneath him. It's about how this defense prepares, how it adjusts, how it responds in real time. And all of that is off. It's off in a way that isn't just about X's and O's. It's about mindset. Because you can scheme all day long, but if your guys don't believe in what they're doing, if they're playing on their heels, it's over before the ball is even snapped. And that's what this looked like, a defense that didn't believe it could get stops, didn't believe it could win matchups, didn't believe in the calls being sent in. They looked tentative. They looked passive. They looked like a group trying not to mess up instead of trying to take control. And this is where leadership matters. On the field, in the huddle, in the meetings. And right now, it's hard to point to a single voice who is clearly setting the tone. It should be TJ Watt, but even he disappeared in this one. It should be Cam Hayward, but he looked out of sync all night. It should be someone from that inside linebacker group that's been praised the last few weeks, but they vanished too. So when the players aren't stepping up and the coaches aren't adjusting, you get what we saw Thursday night. A team that put up 31 points and still never felt like it was going to win. A defense that gave up nearly 500 yards and barely forced a sweat from the opposing quarterback. And this thing with takeaways? That's become another smokescreen. The Steelers haven't forced a turnover since that game in Ireland. That's not a slump. That's a drought. And it's especially glaring for a defense that's built its identity on splash plays. They used to hang their hat on takeaways, on changing games in a single moment. But when those stops dry up, when those turnovers stop coming, then the foundation starts to crack. Because now it's not just about not creating takeaways. It's about not getting stops, period. Some fans are pointing to the short week. Others are digging into the officiating. Some want to talk about individual plays, individual players. But that's not where the problem lives. The problem is systemic. It's structural. This is not a case of one guy blowing a coverage or one missed assignment costing a game. This was a failure from top to bottom. A defense that got outcoached, outschemed, and outplayed. And that should scare everyone who still thinks this team can make noise in January. Because the road ahead isn't getting easier. The opponents won't be any less explosive. And if you can't adjust to what's coming at you, if you just keep throwing the same tired looks out there and hoping for different results, you're not going to survive. You're going to keep getting embarrassed. And no, I don't think firing Terrell Austin in the middle of the season is the answer. That's not how this organization operates. And realistically, that's not going to happen anyway. But something has to give. Something has to change. Because this team is not going to just magically snap back into form by repeating the same mistakes. They've shown they can adjust. We saw in the games against Minnesota and Cleveland, games where the defense looked like it was finally turning a corner. But then this game happens. And it makes you wonder, was that progress real? Or was it just a blip? Because if this game in Cincinnati is who they really are, then this season might be closer to the end than any of us thought. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. In a surprising twist that's already sending shockwaves through the NFL rumor mill, word is spreading that explosive Bengals running back Chase Brown may be abandoning his longtime rival team to make a move to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Brown, known for his breakneck speed and game-changing plays, has been a cornerstone of Cincinnati's backfield, thrilling fans with his ability to turn ordinary runs into highlight reels. But insiders suggest that tensions and behind-the-scenes negotiations could be paving the way for one of the most talked-about potential transfers this season. According to sources familiar with the situation, the Steelers have been quietly monitoring Brown for months, drawn to his rare combination of agility, vision, and sheer acceleration. While nothing has been officially confirmed, whispers around NFL circles hint that Pittsburgh sees Brown as the missing piece to elevate their rushing attack and provide quarterback support in high-stakes games. Meanwhile, Bengals fans are reportedly divided, some shocked by the mere suggestion, others grudgingly admiring the lure of a player who has the ability to redefine an offense on his own. The rivalry between Cincinnati and Pittsburgh adds an extra layer of drama to this potential move. Historically, clashes between these two teams have produced some of the most electrifying moments in the league, and the idea of a star player switching allegiances only fuels the fire. Brown's possible shift isn't just a roster change. It could reshape the dynamics of the AFC North, creating fresh storylines and intense matchups in the seasons to come. While the NFL remains tight-lipped, the rumor mill is already working overtime. Analysts are debating whether Brown's style would flourish under the Steelers' offensive schemes and whether the Bengals have a backup plan ready in case this blockbuster move comes to fruition. If true, it's a development that could have ripple effects far beyond the field, impacting trade strategies, draft priorities, and even ticket sales. For now, fans are left to speculate, tweet, and imagine what could be the most talked-about off-season saga yet. Chase Brown, once a symbol of Bengals pride, possibly donning black and gold in Pittsburgh. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.